The year was 2147, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars, wondering if they were alone in the universe. Some dreamed of friendly aliens bringing peace and knowledge. Others feared invaders bent on destruction. But when the moment finally came, it was neither of those things. Instead, it was something far worse: indifference. On a quiet morning, the skies above so darkened as an enormous alien ship descended from space. It wasn't sleek or shiny like the spaceships people imagined in movies. This vessel was massive, its surface rough and metallic, with jagged edges that seemed almost organic. The air buzzed with energy as the ship hovered silently over the city, casting long shadows across the streets below. People stopped what they were doing, staring up in awe and fear. Geo stood on the rooftop of the Advanced Space Research Institute, his heart pounding. He was only 25, but he'd already made a name for himself as one of Korea's brightest astrophysicists. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the telescope mounted there, trying to get a better look at the ship. Beside him, Hannah leaned forward, her face pale but determined. She was his childhood friend and fellow scientist, someone who had always shared his curiosity about the universe. Together, they watched as a bright beam of light shot down from the ship, striking the ground near the center of the city. "Do you think this is really happening?" Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant murmurs of panic rising from the streets below. "It's real," Geo replied, his tone steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "But why now? Why here?" Before either of them could say more, the beam widened into a glowing platform. A figure stepped out, a tall, slender being with smooth, silver skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed faintly blue, and its movements were precise, almost mechanical. Behind it, dozens of similar creatures followed, each carrying strange devices that emitted soft hums and flashes of light. They didn't speak, not at first, but their presence alone demanded attention. Then, without warning, a holographic image appeared in the sky. It showed a face, humanoid but clearly not human. The creature introduced itself as Kalian, leader of the Vorthree. Its voice echoed through the air, deep and cold, devoid of emotion. "We are the Vorthree," Kalian began, addressing the entire planet as though speaking to children. "For millennia, we have observed your species. You call yourselves humans, yet you are little more than another life form cataloged among countless others. Your wars, your greed, your short lifespans, they reveal your insignificance." Hannah clenched her fists tightly, her knuckles turning white. "How dare they?" she muttered under her breath. Kalian continued, ignoring any potential protests. "You possess intelligence, yes, but it is primitive compared to ours. We have come to claim what resources remain on your planet. In exchange, we offer nothing. Resistance will be met with force. Compliance ensures survival." As the message ended, the hologram vanished, leaving behind a stunned silence. Across the globe, people reacted in different ways. Some cried, some screamed, and others simply sat in shock. Governments scrambled to respond, but their efforts felt futile. The Vorthree's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Their ships could travel faster than light. Their weapons could obliterate entire cities, and their shields made them untouchable. Back on the rooftop, Jiho turned to Hannah, his mind racing. "They're wrong," he said firmly. "We're not insignificant. We've built civilizations, created art, explored the unknown. We've done all of that even though we're fragile and flawed. That has to mean something." Hannah nodded, though her expression remained grim. "But how do we prove it to them? They don't see us as equals. To them, we're just animals in a zoo." Geo didn't answer right away. Instead, he gazed up at the alien ship, thinking about everything he'd learned about science, history, and human nature. There had to be a way to fight back, to show the Vorthree that humanity wasn't just another species to be studied and dismissed. He didn't know what that way was yet, but he knew one thing for certain. Giving up wasn't an option. Over the next few days, chaos spread across the planet. The Vorthree wasted no time asserting their dominance. Massive drones descended from their ship, mining valuable resources from the Earth's surface. Entire forests were stripped bare, rivers drained, and mountains flattened. The aliens paid no heed to the destruction they caused or the lives they disrupted. To them, humanity was irrelevant. In Seoul, riots broke out as people vented their anger and frustration. Buildings burned, streets filled with debris, and police struggled to maintain order. Jiho and Hannah avoided the worst of it by staying inside the Institute, where they worked tirelessly to analyze data collected during the Vorthri's arrival. They hoped to find some weakness, some flaw in the aliens' seemingly perfect systems. One evening, while reviewing footage of the Vorthri drones, Jiho noticed something odd. The machines moved with incredible precision, following exact patterns without deviation. They never adapted, never changed course unless explicitly instructed to do so. It was as if they lacked the ability, or perhaps the desire, to think for themselves. "Hannah, look at this," Jiho said, pointing at the screen. "Their technology is advanced, but it's also rigid, predictable. Do you see what I'm saying?" Hannah leaned closer, studying the video carefully. After a moment, her eyes lit up with understanding. "You're right. They rely entirely on programming. There's no room for creativity or improvisation. That's actually kind of amazing." Gio smiled faintly. "And dangerous for them. If we can exploit that weakness, maybe we stand a chance." Inspired by this discovery, Jiho and Hannah began reaching out to other scientists and engineers around the world. They knew they couldn't fight the Vorth. Continued in Part 2, Jiho and Hannah worked tirelessly, their minds buzzing with ideas. They knew they couldn't take on the Vorthri alone. Humanity's only hope lay in uniting its brightest minds to come up with a plan that could outsmart the aliens. But how? The Vorthri had weapons far beyond anything humans possessed, and their shields seemed impenetrable. It wasn't just about building better technology. It was about finding something the aliens didn't have. "We need to think differently," Joe said one night as he and Hannah sat in the dimly lit lab at the Advanced Space Research Institute. Papers and blueprints were scattered across the table, coffee cups stacked precariously on the edges. "They're advanced, sure, but they don't understand us. They see us as predictable because they've been watching us from afar for centuries. What if we use that against them?" Hannah nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing as she thought. "You mean we show them that humans aren't just creatures of habit. We're unpredictable, creative. That's what sets us apart." "Exactly," Gio replied, leaning forward. "We can't match their strength, so we'll rely on our ingenuity. And not just scientists like us. We need everyone. Artists, hackers, inventors, even kids who build robots in their garages. Anyone who thinks outside the box." The next day, Jiho and Hannah began reaching out to people all over the world. Through encrypted messages and secure channels, they formed a secret coalition called Project Horizon. Their goal was simple: develop unconventional strategies and technologies to counter the Vorthri. Word spread quickly among those who refused to give up hope, and soon the project attracted some of the most brilliant and eccentric minds on the planet. One of the first to join was Min Soo, a young programmer from Busan. He was barely 20, but his skills were unmatched. Min Soo had a knack for hacking into systems no one else could touch, often using methods that baffled cybersecurity experts. When Jiho explained the situation, Min Soo grinned and cracked his knuckles. "Aliens messing with Earth? Sounds fun. I'm in." Another key member was Soo Jin, a robotics engineer from Daegu. She had spent years studying animal behavior and designing machines that mimicked it. Her creations included drones that flew like birds, crawled like insects, and swam like fish. Soo Jin believed nature held the answers to many problems, and she was eager to apply her knowledge to fight against the Vorthri. With their team growing, Jiho and Hannah set to work. They turned the Institute into a makeshift headquarters, filling every room with prototypes, experiments, and brainstorming sessions. Days blurred into nights as they pushed themselves to the limit. Despite the exhaustion, there was a sense of purpose in the air, a shared determination to protect their planet. One evening, while reviewing footage of the Vorthri mining operations, Soo Jin pointed out something interesting. "Look at this," she said, tapping the screen. "Their drones are efficient, but they always follow the same paths. If we disrupt those patterns, maybe we can confuse them." Min Soo leaned in, his fingers flying over his keyboard. I can create a program to hack into their navigation systems, make them crash into each other or veer off course. It won't stop them completely, but it'll buy us time. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need, Jiho said, smiling. Let's do it. As the days passed, Project Horizon made significant progress. One of their biggest breakthroughs came when Su-Jin combined her robotic designs with Min-Su's programming skills. Together, they created small, agile drones capable of working in swarms. These drones could mimic the movements of bees, coordinating attacks and overwhelming larger targets. Jiho called them Stinger bots, and though they weren't ready for full-scale deployment yet, early tests showed promise. Meanwhile, tensions between humanity and the Vorthri continued to escalate. The aliens showed no mercy as they stripped Earth of its resources. Entire villages were displaced, forests burned, and rivers drained dry. People grew desperate, and riots erupted in cities around the globe. Governments tried to negotiate with the Vorthri, but Kalian dismissed their pleas with cold indifference. "They don't care about us," Hannah muttered one night as she scrolled through news reports of devastation. "To them, we're nothing more than pests. And that's why we have to prove them wrong," Jiho said firmly. "Not just for ourselves, but for future generations. If we let them win, what kind of world will we leave behind?" Despite the grim reality, Jiho's words inspired those around him. Even in the darkest moments, there was a glimmer of hope. The members of Project Horizon poured their hearts into their work, driven by the belief that humanity still had a chance. One afternoon, Jiho received a message from a local resistance group. They had managed to capture a damaged Vorthri drone during an ambush. It was badly damaged, but parts of it were still intact. Jiho and Hannah rushed to the location, where they found the drone lying in pieces on a dirt floor. Its metallic surface gleamed faintly, and faint sparks crackled from exposed wires. "This is it," Jiho said, his voice filled with excitement. "If we can study this, we might learn something about their technology." For hours, the team worked to dismantle the drone, carefully examining each component. Hannah discovered that the drone's power source was unlike anything humans had ever seen, a compact energy core that emitted a faint hum. Min-Su, meanwhile, focused on the drone's communication system, hoping to decode its signals. By the end of the day, they had learned two crucial things. First, the drones relied on a central AI system to function. Without it, they were useless. Second, the energy cores were highly unstable, meaning they could be disabled with the right kind of interference. "These cores are their weakness," Jiho said, holding up a fragment of the damaged core. "If we can disrupt them, we can disable their entire fleet." "But how?" Hannah asked. "We don't have the tools to replicate their technology." "We don't need to," Jiho replied. "We just need to improvise. That's what makes us human, remember?" Over the next few weeks, the team worked tirelessly to develop a weapon capable of targeting the energy cores. They called it the pulse emitter, a handheld device designed to emit a powerful electromagnetic pulse. Though crude compared to the Vorthri's sleek technology, the pulse emitter was effective in early tests, successfully disabling captured drones. As the final touches were added to the device, Jiho felt a surge of pride. This was humanity's answer to the Vorthri, not brute force, but ingenuity. Still, he knew the real test lay ahead. The pulse emitter would need to be used in combat, and that meant confronting the aliens directly. One evening, as the sun set over Seoul, Jiho gathered the team for a meeting. "We've done everything we can prepare," he said, looking around the room. "But now it's time to act. The Vorthri think we're weak, that we'll roll over and accept defeat. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." The others nodded, their faces set with determination. They knew the risks, they might not survive, but they also knew they couldn't stand by and do nothing. For the first time in months, there was a spark of hope in their hearts. Tomorrow, they would strike back. The night was quiet, unnaturally so. Jiho stood at the edge of a dense forest, staring out at the Vorthri mining facility in the distance. The alien structure loomed like a metallic beast, its jagged edges glinting under the pale light of the moon. Drones buzzed around it, their movements mechanical and precise, as they continued to strip the land of its resources. Behind him, Hannah adjusted the straps of her backpack, checking one last time to make sure everything was secure. Min-Su and Su-Jin were nearby, crouched low and scanning the area for any signs of trouble. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The pulse emitters were ready, their sleek designs hiding months of hard work that had gone into creating them. Each member of the team carried one, along with a small swarm of Su-Jin Stinger bots tucked safely in protective cases. If everything went according to plan, tonight would mark the first real blow humanity had dealt against a Vorthree. "We've only got one shot at this," Jiho whispered, turning to face his team. His voice was steady, but there was no mistaking the tension in his eyes. "If we fail, they'll know we're onto them. We have to be fast, smart, and careful." Hannah nodded, her expression grim but resolute. "Let's just focus on what we came here to do. Stick to the plan." Min-Su cracked a nervous grin, though his hands trembled slightly as he gripped his pulse emitter. "No pressure, right?" Su-Jin rolled her eyes, but smiled faintly. "Just don't trip over your own feet, okay?" With that, the four of them moved forward, slipping silently through the shadows. The forest provided cover, its thick canopy blocking out most of the moonlight. Every step felt deliberate, every breath measured. They knew the stakes. If they were caught, it wouldn't just mean failure. It could mean death. When they reached the perimeter of the mining facility, Jiho signaled for everyone to stop. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a portable scanner Min-Su had modified to detect the Vorthree's energy signatures. The screen lit up with tiny dots representing the drones patrolling the area. Their movements were predictable, just as Su-Jin had observed before. This was their chance. "Okay," Jiho murmured, pointing to a narrow gap between two large machines. "That's our way in. Stay close, and remember, don't engage unless you absolutely have to." The team crept forward, sticking to the shadows. Su-Jin released a handful of Stinger bots, sending them ahead to scout the path. The tiny drones zipped through the air, blending seamlessly with the hum of the Vorthree equipment. Through her tablet, she monitored their feeds, guiding the group past danger zones. They reached the entrance without incident, but the real challenge lay ahead. Inside the facility, rows of drones worked tirelessly, extracting minerals and loading them onto massive transport ships. The air was thick with heat and the sharp tang of metal. Overhead, glowing conduits pulsed with energy, feeding power to the entire operation. "This is it," Jiho said softly, his gaze fixed on the central control hub. It was a towering structure made of glass and steel, surrounded by armed Vorthree guards. At its core sat a large console, humming with activity. That was their target, the main relay station connecting the facility to the Vorthree fleet. "We need to disable it," Hannah whispered. "Without it, the whole place will shut down." "And alert the mothership," Min-Su added, his voice barely audible. "Are we ready for that?" "We don't have a choice," Jiho replied. "Let's go." Splitting up, the team executed their plan with precision. Min-Su hacked into the facility security systems, disabling cameras and rerouting patrols. Meanwhile, Su-Jin deployed her swarm of Stinger bots, programming them to create diversions. The tiny drones swarmed around the Vorthree guards, buzzing loudly and darting unpredictably. Startled, the aliens turned their attention to commotion, giving Jiho and Hannah the opening they needed. Moving quickly, Jiho and Hannah sprinted toward the control hub. Hannah kept watch while Jiho planted the pulse emitter near the base of the console. As he activated the device, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Sparks flew from the conduits overhead, and the lights flickered violently. "It's working," Jiho shouted, though his voice was drowned out by the sudden chaos. But the victory was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the facility, red warning lights flashing everywhere. The Vorthree guards, now realizing what was happening, rushed toward the control hub. Jiho and Hannah barely had time to grab the data module they had come for before being forced to retreat. "Fall back!" Jiho yelled into his communicator. "We've got what we need." As they ran, Su-Jin's Stinger bots continued to harass the Vorthree, buying precious seconds. Min-Su joined them at the exit, his face pale but determined. Together, The four of them dashed back into the forest, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. Once they were far enough away, they stopped to catch their breath. Jiho held up the data module triumphantly, though his smile was tinged with exhaustion. "We did it," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "We actually did it." Hannah let out a shaky laugh, leaning against a tree for support. "Now comes the hard part, deciphering this thing." Back at the Institute, the team worked nonstop to analyze the stolen data. What they found shocked them. Hidden within the files was information about the Vorthry's central AI system, the Nexus. It controlled not just the mining facility, but the entire fleet orbiting Earth. If they could infiltrate the mothership and disable the Nexus, they could cripple the Vorthry's operations completely. "That's insane," Min-Su said, shaking his head as he stared at the schematics on the screen. "Even if we manage to get inside, how are we supposed to take down something like that?" "We improvise," Jiho replied firmly. "That's what we do best." "But it's suicide," Hannah interjected, her voice rising. "You saw how heavily guarded the control hub was. The mothership will be 10 times worse." "I know," Jiho admitted, his expression darkening. "But think about it. If we succeed, we can end this once and for all. Isn't that worth the risk?" For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Finally, Su-Jin broke the silence. "If anyone can pull this off, it's us. Let's finish what we started." And so, plans were made. They would use a stolen Vorthry shuttle to reach the mothership, disguising themselves as maintenance personnel. Min-Su would handle the hacking, while Su-Jin prepared her swarm bots for maximum distraction. Jiho and Hannah would lead the charge, carrying the pulse emitter that might be their only weapon against the Nexus. As dawn broke over Seoul, Jiho looked out at the city skyline, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He knew the odds were against him, but he also knew one thing for certain. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its weapons. It was its refusal to give up. No matter how dire the situation, humans always found a way to fight back. "We've come too far to turn back now," Jiho said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Let's show them what happens when you underestimate us." Tomorrow, they would launch their most dangerous mission yet. And whether they succeeded or failed, the world would never forget what they had done. The stolen Vorthry shuttle hummed quietly as it approached the massive mothership orbiting Earth. Jiho sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls tightly. Beside him, Hannah monitored the ship systems, her eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. In the back, Min-Su and Su-Jin prepared their equipment, double-checking every detail to ensure nothing went wrong. The tension inside the shuttle was palpable, each of them acutely aware that this mission could very well be their last. As they drew closer to the mothership, its sheer size became overwhelming. It loomed like a mountain in space, its surface covered in jagged structures and glowing conduits. The design was alien, almost organic, as if the ship itself were alive. Joe swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. "This is it," he said softly, glancing at Hannah. "No turning back now." Hannah nodded, her expression calm but determined. "Let's just focus on getting inside, one step at a time." Min-Su leaned forward from his seat in the rear compartment. "I've uploaded the fake maintenance codes into the system. As long as we stick to our cover, we should be able to slip past their security. And if something goes wrong?" Su-Jin asked, raising an eyebrow. "Then we improvise," Jiho replied firmly. "That's what we do best." With a deep breath, Jiho guided the shuttle toward one of the docking bays. The bay doors opened automatically, revealing rows of sleek alien ships lined up neatly. Guards stood at attention, their glowing blue eyes scanning the area with cold precision. Jiho landed the shuttle smoothly, careful not to draw attention. As the hatch opened, the team stepped out, wearing uniforms they had scavenged from a mining facility. They moved with purpose, trying to blend in despite the weight of fear pressing down on them. To their relief, the guards barely glanced at them. Clearly, no one expected resistance from humans. Or perhaps, more accurately, no one thought humans capable of mounting such an operation. The arrogance of the Vorthry worked in their favor, allowing them to proceed without incident. Following the schematics Min-Su had decoded, The team made their way deeper into the ship. The corridors were eerily quiet, illuminated by faintly pulsating lights. Every step echoed loudly, making them feel exposed and vulnerable. Despite their disguises, Jiho couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "This place gives me the creeps," Minsu muttered under his breath, clutching his tablet tightly. "Stay focused," Hannah whispered sharply. "We're almost there." Finally, they reached the chamber housing the Nexus, the central AI system controlling the entire Vorthree fleet. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a cavernous room filled with glowing crystals and swirling energy fields. At the center of it all floated the Nexus, a pulsating sphere of light encased in translucent material. It hummed with an otherworldly intelligence, almost as if it were alive. Geo stared at it, awestruck. This is at the heart of their operation. Before anyone could say more, a voice boomed through the chamber. "You dare trespass here?" Kalian stepped forward, flanked by armed Vorthree guards. His silver skin gleamed menacingly in the dim light, and his glowing blue eyes burned with fury. He sneered at Jiho, his tone dripping with disdain. "You primitive creatures truly believe you can challenge us? You are nothing but pests, unworthy of our attention." Jiho clenched his fists, anger rising within him. But instead of lashing out, he forced himself to remain calm. "You're wrong," he said evenly. "You see us as predictable because you've never truly seen us. We're not bound by your logic or your limits. That's why you'll lose." Kalian laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. "Your words mean nothing. Your actions will prove your insignificance." Without warning, the guards raised their weapons, targeting the intruders. The team scattered, taking cover behind pillars and machinery. Jiho signaled to Sujin, who immediately released her swarm of stinger bots. The tiny drones zipped through the air, darting unpredictably and creating chaos among the Vorthree. Some guards fired wildly, trying to swat them away, while others stumbled in confusion. "Now!" Jiho shouted. Minsu sprang into action, connecting his tablet to a nearby terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he attempted to upload a virus designed to destabilize the Nexus. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as lines of code scrolled rapidly across the screen. "Almost there," he muttered, his voice strained. Meanwhile, Jiho and Hannah engaged the remaining guards, using their pulse emitters to disable the aliens' weapons. The devices emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses, causing the Vorthree equipment to short-circuit and fail. Sparks flew everywhere as the guards struggled to fight back, their once imposing presence crumbling under human ingenuity. Sujin continued to direct her swarm, keeping the Vorthree distracted. Her drones worked together seamlessly, coordinating attacks with precision. One group targeted the guards' legs, tripping them up, while another cluster circled Kalian, forcing him to retreat further into the chamber. Despite the chaos, Kalian refused to give up. With a roar of rage, he lunged toward Jiho, his movements faster than expected. Jiho barely managed to dodge, stumbling backward as Kalian swung at him. The alien leader was stronger than he looked, his blows landing with devastating force. "Joe!" Hannah screamed, rushing to help. She aimed her pulse emitter at Kalian, firing a concentrated burst of energy. The pulse struck him squarely in the chest, knocking him off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Jiho tackled Kalian, pinning him to the ground. "We're done!" Minsu yelled suddenly, his voice breaking through the noise. The viruses uploaded. At that moment, the Nexus began to destabilize. Its glow intensified, pulsing erratically as alarms blared throughout the ship. The energy field surrounding it flickered and crackled, sending shockwaves rippling through the chamber. The Vorthree guards froze, their systems failing as the Nexus lost control. "We need to go now!" Jiho shouted, scrambling to his feet. The team bolted for the exit, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy. Behind them, the Nexus imploded in a spectacular explosion of light and sound, shaking the entire ship. Alarms wailed deafeningly as emergency protocols kicked in, sealing off sections of the mothership. They barely made it back to the shuttle, leaping aboard just as the bay doors began to close. Jiho took the controls, piloting the craft with reckless speed as they escaped the doomed vessel. Through the viewport, they watched in awe as the mothership shuddered violently, its systems collapsing under the strain. Then, with a final, blinding flash, it exploded into a cloud of debris. For a long moment, no one spoke. They simply stared at the wreckage, their hearts pounding with a mix of triumph and disbelief. Against all odds, they had succeeded. "You did it," Hannah said finally, her voice trembling with emotion. "We actually did it." Joe exhaled slowly, leaning back in his seat. "Not just us. Everyone who believed we could win. Humanity proved them wrong." As the shuttle descended toward Earth, the team allowed themselves a rare moment of hope. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in months, the future felt a little brighter. The destruction of the Nexus sent shockwaves through the Vortari fleet. Without their central AI, the alien ships became inert, drifting aimlessly in space like broken toys. The once mighty invaders were now powerless, their advanced technology rendered useless. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence as a massive mothership exploded into a brilliant cloud of light and debris. For many, it felt like a dream, or perhaps a miracle. Back at the Advanced Space Research Institute, Jiho, Hannah, Min-Soo, and Soo-Jin gathered in the main lab to process what had happened. Exhaustion weighed heavily on all of them, but there was no time to rest. News of their success spread quickly, and soon reporters, government officials, and ordinary citizens began arriving, eager to hear their story. Jiho stood near the window, gazing out at the city below. Smoke still rose from areas devastated by the Vortari's mining operations, but amidst the ruins, he could see signs of life returning. People were rebuilding, working together to clean up the mess left behind. It wasn't perfect, and it would take years, maybe decades, to fully recover, but humanity had proven something important. They weren't just survivors. They were fighters. Hannah approached him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jiho with a small smile. "You did good," she said softly. "We all did." Jiho took the cup, his hands trembling slightly. "It doesn't feel real yet," he admitted. "After everything we've been through, I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "It won't," Hannah replied firmly. "Not this time. We showed them who we are, and they'll remember that." In the days that followed, the world celebrated. Streets filled with cheering crowds, waving flags and banners. In Seoul, thousands gathered outside the Institute, chanting Joe's name along with those of his teammates. Governments issued statements praising their bravery, and even rival nations set aside their differences to honor the group's achievement. But despite the adoration, Jiho and his team remained humble. They knew the victory wasn't theirs alone. It belonged to everyone who had refused to give up hope. From the scientists and engineers who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to the ordinary people who resisted the Vortari in their own ways, humanity had come together in a way few thought possible. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jiho and Hannah climbed to the rooftop of the Institute. Below them, the city buzzed with activity, lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. For a while, neither of them spoke, simply taking in the view. "You know," Hannah said finally, breaking the silence, "I used to think about aliens all the time when I was younger. I imagined them being kind, welcoming us into some grand galactic community. But these weren't anything like that." "No," Gio agreed, shaking his head. "They saw us as insignificant, as animals to be studied and controlled. But we proved them wrong," Hannah continued, her voice growing stronger. "We showed them that humans aren't defined by our weaknesses. We're defined by how we overcome them, by how we adapt, innovate, and fight back." Gio nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "And maybe that's a lesson here, not just for them, but for us too. We're stronger than we think, smarter, more resilient." As if on cue, Min-Soo and Soo-Jin joined them on the rooftop, carrying snacks and drinks they'd scavenged from the cafeteria. The 4 of them sat together, laughing and sharing stories of everything they'd been through. There were moments of sadness, too, memories of friends lost, homes destroyed, lives shattered. But even those were tinged with gratitude for having made it this far. "I never thought I'd say this," Min-Soo said, leaning back on his elbows, "but I'm actually going to miss all the chaos. It gave me a purpose." Su-Jin smirked, nudging him playfully. Don't worry, there's still plenty of work to do. We can't let humanity get complacent after this. If another species comes knocking, we need to be ready. Ready and smarter, Geo added. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Project Horizon expanded its efforts. With the threat of the Vorthree gone, the team focused on using the knowledge they gained to advance human technology. They reverse-engineered parts of the stolen Vorthree equipment, discovering new ways to harness energy and improve communication systems. Scientists around the world collaborated, sharing data and ideas to ensure humanity would never again be caught off guard. Governments also took action, forming international alliances dedicated to space exploration and defense. Satellites were launched to monitor potential threats, and research facilities sprang up across the globe. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming a true interstellar civilization, not out of aggression, but out of necessity. Still, Geo couldn't shake the feeling that the Vorthree might not have been the only ones watching Earth. Somewhere out there, among the countless stars, other civilizations likely existed. Some might be friendly, others hostile. Either way, humanity now knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't go down without a fight. On a quiet morning weeks later, Geo found himself back on the rooftop, where it had all begun. He held a small device in his hand, a prototype communicator based on Vorthree technology. It was crude compared to what the aliens had used, but it worked. Through it, he could send messages far beyond Earth's atmosphere, into the depths of space. "What are you doing?" Hannah asked, joining him. Her hair fluttered gently in the breeze as she looked over his shoulder. "Sending a message," Jiho replied, "just in case anyone else is listening." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "What does it say?" Jiho grinned. "It says, to whoever finds this, we're here. We're human, and we're not afraid." Hannah laughed softly, shaking her head. "Bold move. What if they don't like bold?" "Then we'll deal with it," Jiho said confidently, "like we always do. Together." They stood there for a while longer, watching the sun rise higher in the sky. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and unknowns. But for the first time in a long time, humanity faced it with hope and determination. As Jiho turned off the communicator and slipped it into his pocket, he glanced at Hannah. "No matter what happens next, we'll face it together." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light of dawn. "Always." And with that, the two friends gazed at the stars, knowing humanity's journey was only beginning.